If you change your mind, you change your life, just change your mind. The Lord loves you. He's standing with his arms wide open for you. Oh, be encouraged, cause this day's for you. Don't you let this opportunity pass by you. Yeah. Oh, change your mind.
Good morning, everybody. It's Pastor Wendell Jones here at Changing Your Mind Ministries. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Sunday to you. So glad to be with you. And I do believe I have a relevant and timely word. Well, let me say it like this. Honestly, y'all, I think I'm going to be preaching to myself and let y'all listen. But I know it's not just me. Listen, I think today I really want to talk to the exhausted leader, because I know you out there, and I know with everything that's going on right now, it's incredibly taxing on you, incredibly draining, especially if you're trying to continue to do good and be present and do all of these things in the midst of COVID, in the midst of all of these limitations that we now have placed upon us. I know you're tired. I know you're tired. Matter of fact, it made me think about what my counselor once said to me. I was told that I was suffering from compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue. Tired of caring. Compassion fatigue comes about normally when you have been constantly and consistently subjected to the traumas of other people. And that, that happens in the vocation of preaching, but it's not just reserved to preachers. That can happen in just any relationship where you're dealing with somebody else's trauma so much you don't even have time to work on your own stuff. And it simply wears you out. So I want to talk to anybody out there that has felt worn out. Past tense, present tense. I think this message is really for you. And so hopefully it'll give you some encouragement. It will give you some understanding, because it's always good to know that somebody gets you. Somebody understands where you are. And I know, especially in this Christian faith, we're supposed to be on 10 all the time. We're supposed to be blessed and highly favored all the time. But sometimes, as Paul wrote, you really can become weary in well-doing. He wouldn't have put it in there if it wasn't a possibility. I think it's beyond possibility. I think it's a probability. It's everybody's going to visit that place several times over the course of your life. But I really believe God's got something to say to you and me and others who can find themselves on occasion just being tired. All right, look with me. And I know you heard that introduction, and we're gonna read this verse, and you're gonna say to yourself, where is Jones going? Just hang on. Just hold on. We'll make it clear. As the preachers like to say, it'll make sense in a minute. Look with me in 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, the 33rd verse. I got two versions for you. I got the New American Standard Version, also have King James Version. NASB says, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals. And King James says, be not deceived. Evil communication corrupts good manners. Today's sermon is entitled, Fish Out of Water. Fish out of water. If you ever had a chance to own some goldfish in your life, those little crazy little things at some point will jump completely out of the bowl. You'll come home and there he is, if he's still alive, flipping around on wherever he landed. And you're like, what was this suicide? What is this? Don't you realize that you can't survive out of this bowl? He was a fish out of water. Fish out of water. Let's talk a little bit. Have you ever had the chance to see images or video of a beached whale? A beached whale, and it's just exactly what that says. It is a whale that is now on the beach, a beached whale. As you can see from the video that you're watching now, this magnificent creature is absolutely out of place. It is on the beach, dying. You see that? And listen, there are two primary reasons why a whale beaches itself, places itself on a beach. The first reason is that he or she gets tired for whatever reason. And then the whale allows the current to just take him wherever the current wants to go. He is literally going with the flow. And oftentimes currents move in the direction of the land. And so the whale finds himself, by giving in, acquiescing, letting go, not putting up any resistance and just going with the flow, finds himself on the beach. The second primary reason that a whale beaches itself is that the whale somehow got caught in the shallow end of the water, and the tide recedes. The tide goes back out. For some reason, the whale found something attractive about the shallow end, and he left the deep to venture into the shallow parts, and found himself getting caught up in the place he didn't belong. Now, regardless of why the whale found himself on the beach, what does the future hold for this whale? Well, unless he can get back in the water, it is a case of certain death. Certain death, because he left the environment that God made for him, because he got tired of doing what he should be doing, swimming. Or he got caught up in shallow stuff. Let's talk about that. Certain death is there for him. Why would he leave? Why, other than being tired? Out there in the deep part, are there predators out there in the deep? Absolutely. Is there risk out there in the deep? Yes, indeed. All of that is out there. But here's my question to you. There's predators, there's risk out there. But is it more dangerous to be in the shallow end than it is to be out there in the deep? You see, what happens when the whale ventures over into the shallow end of the water, the shallow end strips the whale of his strengths. See, his strengths are made manifest in the deep part, but when he gets over into the shallow parts, he can't use those things that God gave him to make him strong. He can't use those things that God made him to make him different. And as a matter of fact, he becomes so weak that he is now subject, or he's a sitting duck for the things that would normally be afraid of him out in the deep. A beach whale is subject to little dogs running up on him and nipping him, cats and birds and even human beings doing stuff to the whale now, because he's not out in the deep where his strength is made manifest. He's in the shallow part. As soon as he got in the shallow part, he can't use his strength anymore. And so now he's made subject to things that are less than him. Things that normally would be afraid of him in his natural environment. See, out in the deep, the whale, how do you say this? Out in the deep waters, the whale uses the resistance of the water to his advantage. You see, If you're watching it, you know how to swim. The only reason why you're able to move through the water is that you use the resistance of the water to propel your body forward. When you're stroking, you're cupping the water, and the water is pushing back, and you're pushing against the water, and so it pulls you through the water because the water is resisting you. Same thing is true for a whale, but a whale is designed much better than a man. A whale has been designed by God that he can move almost effortlessly through the water, but he's using the resistance of the water to move him along. And as you can imagine, anytime you're faced with something of resistance, it can wear you out. Resistance can be your advantage, but resistance, constant resistance, can wear you out. But it's out there where he's being resisted that he gets that his strength is made known. You see, the problem with the beached whale is that this fish out of water left his environment. He left the environment that God designed for him. This environment that's got threats, this environment that's got predators, you got sharks, killer whales, got all types of stuff that might want to nip at him. He left that environment that has all of that stuff. But it is in this environment too. It's the place of his power. It's the place where he's his most productive. And it is also the place where he sees others like him. And speaking of others, there are some cases where whales don't beach themselves alone. Sometimes you will see this mass move where several whales beach themselves at the same time. You see, what actually happens is that the lead whales, whales run in packs, just like we people run in packs. Whales run in packs. And so this lead whale, for some reason, got exhausted, got tired, got attracted to the shallow end, or whatever it might have been. He began to move in that direction, and he begins to set off this chain reaction. He begins to create this pattern, a pattern kind of similar to generational curses. That once one goes, others follow. And see what happens when the whale gets tired. See, here's what I've learned about tired, y'all. Tired is contagious. Your weariness is contagious because weariness allows you to lower the bar. Weariness gives you incentive to lower the expectations. And so when you lower the expectations and lower the bar for yourself, it is not just about yourself, especially if you are the influencer leader. You lower the bar for those that are with you. You lowering the bar for those that are behind you. And lo and behold, you all end up beached. You found something easier about the shallow end. You found something attractive about the shallow stuff. And lo and behold, those connected found themselves going in the same direction you did. This group dynamics can cause everybody to accept the shallow end, putting them at greater risk, putting them at greater compromise, putting them, as we stated earlier, now being subject to things that normally would be less than them. How many times, let me just say it right now. At what point in my story did I stop talking about the whale and start talking about you? How many times have you been lured away into the shallow things of life? And you might even looked up and saw that some people followed you there. How many times did you get weary from just having to muster up the strength to do what you have to do in the area that God has placed you, the area that God has called you? And right now, because of your exhaustion, you might be a fish out of water. You're tired of the work that it takes to maintain your environment. But it's the same environment that God put you in that reveals your strength. A whale is such a majestic creature out in the deep. A whale is helpless on the beach. Have you been lulled into the shallow places because you're tired of the resistance that makes you move, that makes you grow? What are you avoiding now? What is it? That church? Yeah, that church over there was just too challenging. I had to find somewhere to go that was a little easier. They too deep over there. I need something a little less. I need church light. Maybe that relationship, the one that you declared was demanding, the one that kept telling you that you can be better, that you can do better, the one that would not accept mediocrity from you. The one that you kept saying, I wish they would just accept me for who I am. But they had no interest in being in the shallow end. You kept looking for something easier. But if we can just have a moment of reflection, a moment of honesty, if you think back to it, to that church, that job, that relationship, whatever it was that you felt like was asking and demanding too much of you, when you was in that setting, when you was in that environment, you grew your most, didn't you? Let's just walk down memory lane. Let's just have a moment of nostalgia. Look back at it. Look back at it. You grew your most. It was in those times that you discovered gifts that you didn't even realize that you had. It was in those times that you could do things that you never thought you were able to do. It was in those times that you had visions and dreams that you had thought you lost. But somehow your reflexes and somehow your wounds came back up and they began to make you long for the shallow end. Because it just looks easier over there. But what you fail to realize is that the shallow end takes away your strengths. You can't be all you can be when you go to the shallow end. How many times have you tried to return back to what was familiar, only to realize that once you got there, you had to play small. You had to be somebody different. You couldn't talk about the things you had learned. You couldn't do the things that you would normally do now because that wasn't suitable for the shallow end. Because over there, people would tell you think you're better. You think you know everything, all these other kind of labels. So once you're in the shallow end, you got to fight now to be shallow. While your bigness is screaming on the inside. Am I making sense? See, the thing is, for whatever reason, you left the right environment. Maybe you got tired of swimming. Maybe the shallow end was attractive. I don't know what it is. Something was dangling over there. Something was sparkling, shining over there. And you left the right environment to go into the place that looked easier. Environment. Environment matters. I was surprised and I felt led to really look up what the word environment means and the origin of that word. Environment, the original understanding of the word really means in my circle. It's on that slide. Let me show that. I'm sorry. It's on the slide. It's in my circle. Your environment is your what? It's your circle. That group that you're leading to the shallow end, or you're part of the group being led to the shallow end. Who is in your circle? Paul is trying to warn us in this text, and I can connect the text to what I'm saying about the dangers and even the power of your circle. Let's look at what he says. Let's read that again. He says, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals, or King James, do not be deceived. Evil communication corrupts good manners. Bad company, bad communication, bad environment, bad circle. Bad in this text is the opposite of righteous, literally. Righteous means to be as you ought to be. Bad in this text means not as it ought to be. Your downfall begins to happen because your circle consists of those who are not as they ought to be. They're not in pursuit of the righteousness. See, listen, your environment is not your city. Your environment is not your state. Your environment is not even this country, as jacked up as things might seem right now. Your true environment is your circle. What's so amazing is that if you have the right circle, you can succeed and stride regardless of what's going on in these other environments outside of yours. If you have the right people who do challenge you, you have the right people who do push you, you have the right people that will tell you about yourself, people who are in pursuit of righteousness, who they ought to be. And see, we say who they ought to be because it doesn't mean that they're finished yet, but it means they're moving in the direction and learning the things about God, and they're learning the things about themselves, and they're learning the things about you, and they're trying to hold their circle accountable. See, this is one of those messages. Let me pause for a message interruption. This is one of those messages where I don't want to yell at you. And believe it or not, I'm almost done. See, I feel like if I yell at you, I might trigger you because you're already on the edge. I just need to talk to you calmly. What's up with your circle? Did you leave the circle that pushed you? Did you leave the circle that reminded you of your dreams? Or are you somewhere sunning yourself in the shallow air, not knowing that you're subjecting yourself to a slow death, subjecting yourself to prey that's beneath you, at least out in the deep part? You had formidable opponents. Now here you are on the beach in the shallow end, fighting things that are usually beneath you. Have you not noticed how weaker you've become to things that used to not even tempt you? You left the deep part. I really think that's what the psalmist was talking about. We quote this sometimes. I think we quote a little bit out of context. I think I have as well. Psalms 42:7, when he says, deep calls to the deep. At the sound of your waterfalls, all your breakers and your waves have rolled over me. We normally just want to talk about deep calls to the deep. And I've said that myself quite a few times. But when you go back and look at the text is written by somebody in despair. It's written by somebody that is simply worn out. And see, in the verse that we just read, deep calls into the deep, let's go past that for a minute. And you see where it talks about your breakers and your waves have rolled upon me. There are no breakers and waves out in the deep. Breakers and waves hit the shore. This person is saying, I'm already beached. I'm already where I shouldn't be. And he says, I've been looking for you, God, but you out in the deep. You see me. You see that I have gone into the shallow end. You see me that I've now opted for the shallow things. I've opted for the shallow people. I've opted for the easier things. I opted for the familiar relationships. I've opted for all of that because I thought that was going to be a cure to my exhaustion. I thought that was going to be the cure to my fatigue, not realizing that you are my peace and you are my rest, and I can find that even in the deep. And so here he is on the shore thinking God would meet him in the easier waters, the waters that seem to have less resistance. And God is saying, come to me out in the deep. I'll give you rest. He'd already given up, thinking God would meet him in the low place. But deep calls to the deep places within you, to my exhausted leaders. Is your circle pushing you in the right direction, or are they tempting you to venture out into the shallow waters? But Pastor, you don't understand. I'm tired. Yeah, I do. I get that way too. Quite often. I have no idea how many times I quit in my head. Only to go out into the deep, and God gives me something else that energizes me, inspires me. He breathes life back into me. It's easy to be like the goldfish and leap out of the bowl, thinking that something's greater on the outside of your territory, only to find yourself dying because you left your place of righteousness, being attracted to shallow things, shallow people who hadn't pushed themselves out into the deep, looking for something easier. I need you to understand that your peace is not on the shore. Your peace is in the next thing God reveals to you in the deep. That gives you reason and incentive to get up again, strive again, push against the resistance again. Don't be a fish out of water. I'm torn right now to want to do something a little bit more energetic, but my integrity says don't do that. I'm torn to keep going and talk some more, but my integrity says we're going to stop right here. Because I think you hear me. And I think you're at a point of decision. I'm talking to the exhausted leader. There's nothing for you in the shallow end. It will make you the prey of things that are beneath you. Let's show them the takeaway, team. The takeaway says, you have been given the power to construct your environment. Choose wisely. Don't fall for the temptation of the shallow end. Launch out into the deep. Allow the resistance to bring forth your strengths. This is where God is calling you, and this is where you will meet the real you. Even this message feels like a risk. Because I understand what people expect on Sunday. But I had to give you what you need. I had to give you what God said to give you. You know why? Because we're counting on you. We need you. And if you keep going toward the shallow end, you won't end up there alone. There'll be others that'll go there because you just lowered the bar. People have a tendency to gravitate towards what's easier, not what's necessary. What's easier, not what's true. I need you to ask God for rest. And I need you to ask God to inspire you again. Breathe on me again. Breathe on me again. The resistance, as aggravating as it may seem, it's the thing that brings your strengths to the surface. It's the resistance that has shown you how resilient you are. Quit fretting it. It's the resistance that has allowed you to tap into areas of you that you didn't even know existed. Quit asking God to take the pushback away. If you're the leader, you're breaking through things. Don't give in to the lure of the shallow end. God's not going to follow you there. He's going to stay in the deep and call you home to where you're majestic. The place where you thrive. The place where you're productive. The place where you grow by leaps and bounds. All right. I feel like I need to just pause there and breathe myself. We always want to end this with a call to salvation. In case there's some young man and some young woman, there always is some young man or some young woman that's watching that has not said yes to Christ, and you just have to make a decision. I'm getting ready to call you from the shallow end. You have beached yourself. And where you are, your greatest attributes can't come to life. Whale cannot swim. You saw the picture. That whale can't do anything on the beach. The water is simply not deep enough. You can't be who you're supposed to be because you're on the shallow end. You need to go to the place where your feet can't touch the bottom. The Bible calls that faith. And today, if you have just a measure of faith to say yes to God, He has the rest of the faith that He can give you, that you can finally say yes to yourself. Are you ready? Come on, repeat after me. Say, Father, I thank you for Jesus Christ. I confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord. And I believe in my heart that God raised Him from the dead. And because of this confession, and because of this faith, the Bible says, I am now righteous and I am saved. I belong to you now, Lord, and you are my Lord. Holy Spirit, you are fully God. Come live in me. Change me. Set this captive free. Take me out into the deep and reveal my gifts and my strengths to me. And Lord, I spend my days giving you glory. In Jesus' name, amen. If you'd like to help us financially, we really would appreciate it. You can sow into the ministry via the 3 ways you see at the bottom of the screen. You can give directly through our website at cymm.org/give. Or you can go to Cash App and do $WeAreCYM, or through the Givelify app and find our church and give that way. Listen, I know this thing wears you out. I'm one of you. I feel you. But I also know where restoration is. Let me say it again. It's not on the shallow end. And it doesn't happen because you throw your hands up and allow the current to take you wherever it goes. Ask the Lord for rest. And ask the Lord for newness. Something that excites your soul again. And He'll give it to you. Promise you. Because His glory is at stake. He has a vested interest in seeing you live and live well. All right. Thank you for having this little fireside chat with me in September. We just cruised through it like we were driving in an old Deuce and a Quarter on a Sunday afternoon. No need to go past 35 miles per hour. Please know I love you. I do. Until next time, much love.